New faces.
I feel great, man. Happy to be here.
And new spaces. Today, the 2020 New York Jets training camp kicks into another gear. After weeks of training and conditioning, the Jets are poised and ready for football activities. There's a palpable energy surrounding the Jets. And we are here to bring it all to you live from our brand new BetMGM studio. In a process that started back in the fall of 2018, the conversion of a conference room into a state-of-the-art facility with one goal in mind, to bring you the best coverage of the New York Jets, and that coverage all begins now.
Go, there you go. Work. Let's go. Eyes up. 1, 2, 3. Yes.
Welcome to Training Camp Live, presented by Atlantic Health Systems.
Well, isn't that a sight for sore eyes? The New York Jets back on the practice field for the first time since December, which is 7 months ago. It might feel a little longer than that. But week one is officially less than 1 month away as the Jets will travel to Orchard Park, right where they ended their 2019 season. Welcome into Training Camp Live, presented by Atlantic Health. Eric Allen, Ethan Greenberg here in the brand new BetMGM studio. Olivia Landis will join us later in the show from the sideline. But EA, it is good to be back here.
You know, you just said it. It's been 7 months since the Jets have been on the practice field behind us here at One Jets Drive. And it's been a long challenge in offseason for everybody. There's no doubt about that as the world continues to battle a pandemic. But I think this is a good day for the Jets, and hopefully it's a good day for Jets Nation as well, because we're sitting here in a new studio, and it's a great honor for us, everybody here at Jets 360, to bring you closer to the action.
And we'll be bringing you action from the new studio all season long. And I just can't get enough of this, having the picture of seeing the Jets on the practice field. And today's headline, presented by JetBlue, is no surprise. We touched on it a little bit, but more or less, it might look a little different after an unprecedented offseason. But football's back at One Jets Drive.
And Le'Veon Bell is back here at One Jets Drive. He's looking good at about 210 to 215 pounds, and we'll get to Olivia Landis later. But yes, this is going to be the most unique training camp we have ever covered. Bottom line is the Jets and everybody else in the National Football League had virtual off seasons. They did not have any OTAs throughout the spring. So what we've seen here early was the Jets had an acclimation period under strength and conditioning coach Justice Gallick. And then earlier this week, they had some individual drills. And what you're going to see out there today is basically like a spring OTA. Remember, no preseason games for the Jets. So they got to ramp up the speed here early in training camp. And the first padded practice is Monday. And oh, by the way, we will be live here again on Monday as the Jets continue to progress here in training camp.
And all eyes are going to be on that man right there, number 14, Sam Darnold, who enters his third season in the NFL, his second season in Adam Gase's system. And really, he had a sophomore season that was defined by the 3 games that he missed with mono. But when you look at his stats compared to his rookie season and last season, all of them improved. But is there one, EA, that stands out in particular to you?
Yeah, look real closely at that bottom stat. That's what I like to see, the 7-6 record as a starter. Listen, he is entering his second season under Adam Gase. So you're seeing him take more leadership. He got the guys together in the offseason, actually during that virtual phase, the skill position talent down in Florida, and they went over routes. They went over details. They talked about plays. And Le'Veon Bell said it the other day, I'm sensing a different guy. Sam Darnold's a little bit more stern this year. And number 14 is in good shape. He's come to camp and he said, I'm watching what I'm eating right now. I love In-N-Out, but I got to stay away from my favorite number 1 at In-N-Out with the grilled onions. So he's eating better. And He worked in the offseason with Jordan Palmer, as he's done in the past. He worked with Bills quarterback Josh Allen. Those guys have grown to be fast friends. But listen, he got better across the board in Adam Gase's system last year, despite facing a lot of adversity. And he's a guy who is bringing everybody in right now, and that's what you're seeing from Sam Darnold. Despite being just 23 years old, this is his third year in the system, second year in the system, third year in the National Football League, and this is becoming more of his team.
I'm glad you mentioned that because Adam Gase said that Sam Darnold's going to have to become an extension of the coaching staff after an offseason that was all virtual, no in-person meetings. Of course, like you mentioned, Sam Darnold and the skill players went to Miami for a couple days. But what does Sam need to do in this time, in this shortened training camp with no preseason, to get accustomed to his new weapons that include Brashad Perriman and rookie Denzel Mims?
Well, he's got to take them under his wing. And Brashad Perriman, the thing that he's got going for him is he's played in a number of different systems, so he's a veteran in the National Football League. Mims doesn't have the benefit of coming in and having the spring, but he is a willing learner. What you like about those two guys, if you're Sam Darnold, of course, is they're big targets, big catch radius, sub 4.4 speed on the outside. They can get down the field. Darnold worked on the offseason with Jordan Palmer on his long ball accuracy and also his accuracy on the move, moving to his right. It's not just the Jets are working in new weapons on the outside, though. Sam Darnold has a completely new offensive line in front of him, so communication is going to be the key. He has said, hey, I want guys to ask me questions. I want guys to come to me and ask me, hey, what do I want in this situation? And Darnold is reaching out to players more. You're seeing more of a vocal guy. He's got it. He had it at USC. I know people watched One Jets Drive the other night, another great Jets 360 production, where we look back at Darnold at USC, but he's got that it factor. He is a natural leader. Guys are going to follow him. And oh, by the way, he's a tremendous athlete, an accurate passer, could beat you in the pocket, and he's dangerous on the move.
One guy, though, that is returning to this Jets offense, that, of course, running back Le'Veon Bell. EA mentioned it, that he reported to camp in phenomenal shape. Hasn't been this light since his days at Groveport Madison High School. And now let's head to the field for our Field Pass segment presented by Toyota, where Olivia Landis has more on Juice. Liv, what can you tell us about Le'Veon this year?
Well, good morning, Ethan and EA. All I can say, first and foremost, is it feels really good to be back on the field. But you mentioned running back Le'Veon Bell, and actually about a month ago, he took to social media and let fans know that he has yet to play his best football. That's right, the seventh-year veteran is talking about how his best football is yet to come. And he proves that by coming into camp in some of the best shape that he's ever been in his life. He even posted on social media how at this point, he's currently at 4% body fat. Now, head coach Adam Gase, he spoke to the media the other day and talked about Le'Veon Bell and talked about how he really is just in some of the best shape he's ever seen. And listen, this is a guy who is in his second year in this offensive scheme. You know, Adam Gase said that he doesn't make a lot of mistakes. He said he's really looking forward to implementing him more into this offense this year. And you know what? Gase even did take a little bit of ownership from last year and said that there were times I did force feed the ball into Le'Veon Bell's hand, but he said it's going to be different this year. They want to get the ball in his hands and let him make plays. And I think Le'Veon Bell is excited and ready to do the same.
Liv, you covered Bell last year, and you heard him talk the other day. Where do you think the motivation is coming from? Because he's talked about, hey, you're going to see the best Le'Veon Bell there has been in the National Football League. And he talked about his training, how he's trained harder in the last 6.5 months than he did in his first 6 or 7 years in the National Football League. He's also went on social media a little bit and talked about where people are putting him among the NFL's elite running backs. So I just want to get your thoughts on what do you think is causing the fire? Where is this fire coming from for Bell? Because right now he looks great. We're watching him right.
He does, yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, he does look great, like you said, and every guy has his own reason for motivation. But I think him being in his second season with Adam Gase as the head coach and the offensive coordinator, and being in this second season in this offense, I think he's really excited and ready to get the ball rolling. GM Joe Douglas made a lot of moves this offseason. You guys already touched on it a little bit, completely rebuilt the offensive line. And hey, not only does the offensive line help quarterback Sam Darnold, but it helps the starting running back in Le'Veon Bell. So I think he's really excited to get the new guys in there. And you know what? That could be where the motivation starts from. But all I know is I'm excited to see number 26 on the field.
Well, also another potential source of motivation, Liv Enier, is his career low 3.2 yards per carry average last season. He did break 1,000 scrimmage yards, but I think that there's a little extra juice in Le'Veon Bell in 2020. And let's take a look at the injury update here in training camp presented by Atlantic Health. And of course, the biggest thing here, there's not a lot of injuries right now, EA, but the 3 tiers of injury list, you have the guys that have opted out, which include CJ Mosley, namely, and then you look at the guys on the bottom here. The reserve COVID list is just included of people maybe not that have contracted the virus, but that have been exposed to it. So it's really a precaution for the NFL throughout the league. And then, of course, you have your physically unable to perform list. That includes 3 wily vets. And the last guy there, Avery Williamson, I mean, this Jets defense looks a little different in 2020 compared to last season, because not only are the Jets playing without CJ Mosley, who opted out, but they also have to replace Jamal Adams, who, of course, is now a member of the Seattle Seahawks.
Yeah, a lot to digest there. The silver lining for the Jets is that they played 14 games last season without C.J. Mosley. He's a one-man wrecking crew against the Buffalo Bills in Week 1, but unfortunately went down with the groin injury. He was excited to get back here this season in year 2 with the Jets, unfortunately citing family reasons. He opted out, so you feel bad for Mosley because you know he was chomping at the bit to get back on the field. Avery Williamson is another guy who is chomping at the bit to get on the field. Remember, 2 years ago, Avery Williamson was a stat stuffer. He led this defense in terms of tackles. They thought he was going to play alongside C.J. Mosley last season. He went down with an ACL injury in the preseason. The good thing about Williamson, even though he started camp on the PUP list, is he's just got to do a couple more things to check the boxes to return to the field. And the Jets have depth at the inside linebacker position. Greg Williams and company played without Mosley last year, lined up without Mosley last year, number 7 in the National Football League. Overall, number 2 in the NFL against the run.
And C.J. Mosley, of course, is the quarterback of the Jets defense, but the Jets played without the quarterback of their defense last season, and Avery Williamson. All 5 players on this Jets roster at the inside linebacker position have started games in the NFL before. And really quickly, EA, before we move on, I just want to get your thoughts on the Jamal Adams trade. I mean, it feels like this is the first time that we've spoken to the fans here. We got to touch on this really quickly, though. Jamal Adams, now a member of the Seahawks. They get Bradley McDougald, and they get a plethora of draft picks.
We're going to be talking about this trade for years. It's one of the most significant moves in franchise history. I think Joe Douglas got a great haul in return for a great player. Jamal Adams, a Pro Bowler last year. In fact, a Pro Bowler the last 2 seasons, an All-Pro last year. He really thrived under Greg Williams, but you know, in the NFL, you have to assess value. You have to do what's right for your team. The Jets got back a starting caliber safety in Bradley McDougald, who started 75 games in the National Football League. He has 10 interceptions. And Douglas has set this franchise up long term. 2 first-round picks in 2021, 2 first-round picks in 2022. You can do a lot with those. And the Jets are going to be okay at the safety position. You do not replace Jamal Adams 1-for-1. He is that good of a player. With that being said, Marcus May is a very good player. Played a lot of post-safety position for the New York Jets with Jamal Adams. Jamal Adams was thriving inside the box, 6.5 sacks last season. But maybe Marcus May comes up and plays a little bit in the box at times, or is used as a blitzer. McDougald, I talk about his ball skills. And then finally, you drafted Ashton Davis out of California, a 3rd-round pick. The Jets like his versatility and athleticism.
Marcus May said yesterday, he spoke to the media, and he said that he likes the group of safeties in this building right now, even though he is friends with Jamal Adams and wishes him the best. But when you look at over the span of 7 months, what's happened? I know the Jamal Adams and C.J. Mosley news is rather recent, but when you look at the grand scope of things, I think you got to talk about the offensive line, because this is a group that has changed significantly. Right here, you talk about the guys that lined up for the Jets in Week 1 at MetLife Stadium against the Buffalo Bills. None of those players are on the Jets roster right now, and instead, these are the 7 guys that were brought in the offseason by Joe Douglas, starting up front on the left side of your screen with free agency, and then, of course, big 77 right there, the great wall of green, as Alex Lewis put it, Mekhi Becton.
Mekhi Becton, 6'7", 363, 364 pounds. Joe Douglas' first draft pick as GM of the New York Jets, and he carries that weight quite well. A mauler in the run game at Louisville. He'll have to pick up some things as far as pass technique under the tutelage of offensive line coach Frank Pollock here, but the Jets were very active in free agency. They bring in Conor Mcgovern, who started 31 games at the center position. You see him number 60 there on your screen. For the Denver Broncos the last couple seasons, Phillip Lindsay, of course, had back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons. Greg Van Roten was probably the most effective blocker for the Carolina Panthers last season. Douglas struck in free agency with that signing. George Fant, you mentioned him as well. He played left tackle and right tackle for the Seattle Seahawks, and even lined up as a 3rd tight end at times. So don't forget about Jonathan Harrison and Chuma Adoga as well. Adoga was a rookie last season, started 8 games. So the point here is what Douglas has done is he's increased the talent up front, but also flexibility, versatility. Alex Lewis returns as well. Different look this season. Brian Winters, longest tenured Jet, no longer here, released. The Jets will see him early this season, September 13th in Buffalo, because that's who the Jets will be facing then. But I think Joe Douglas did a great job as far as revamping that offensive line, and he kept his promise to Sam Darnold's parents. They said, I am going to protect your son, and he went out and did it in his first true offseason as GM of the New York Jets. Becton can be a foundational pillar. If you're a Jet fan, you're hoping he's blocking for Sam Darnold for 10-plus years.
And there's the architect of the Jets roster right there, Joe Douglas. He's a former offensive lineman, so to no one's surprise, he wants to build from the inside out, which means both the defensive and offensive lines back to the other positions. And one thing, you mentioned Brian Winters being the longest tenured Jet before he was released. Well, that player, well, 2 of them now, Steve McClendon and Jordan Jenkins both joined this team in 2016, and they're the longest tenured Jets. How about that?
That's a roster overhaul, and if you're Joe Douglas and you're Adam Gase, you're putting your imprint on this roster right now. But with guys like McClendon, guys like Jordan Jenkins, guys like Marcus May, guys like Sam Darnold, you do have a culture in place, okay? And you're trying to create something here. And I think the Jets, what they have going for them this season, yes, a lot of roster change, but you do have a lot of leaders on all layers if you expand. And, you know, we're looking at Chris Herndon right now, speaking about a guy who could play a pivotal role for the Jets offense.
Well, and McClendon is basically like a father figure to everybody on the roster, and Chris Herndon actually trained with Steve McClendon at McClendon's new gym, Team MVP in Flowery Branch, Georgia. And this tight ends group is one of the deepest on the Jets team. When you think about the defensive side, I think it's fair to say the inside linebackers is the deepest position on the defense. And then you look at the tight ends, Ryan Griffin, I know, is on the physically unable to perform list, but Chris Herndon coming back to this offense after a lost sophomore year, I think piques the interest of a lot of Jets fans, and he's somebody that his rookie year really took off with Sam Darnold from a chemistry perspective.
39 catches, 502 yards his rookie season, 4 touchdowns. He said, and we talked to him the other day, you got to listen to the New York Jets official podcast, Said his
Plug it
body,
up.
body feeling good, Greens, and he's in a good space mentally. He said last season really taught him how fast this all can be taken from him, and he's not taking anything for granted. Of course, last year was suspended for 4 games, and then he had the hamstring injury. He comes back against the New York Giants, and he suffers the rib injury, but he's feeling good. He can change the dynamic of this entire offense because he is a tight end who can stretch the field, and he can create space on the outside and create space for guys like Le'Veon Bell, and Sam Darnold loves throwing those tight ends.
That's for sure. In 2018, Chris Herndon, as a rookie, second on the Jets in receptions, second on the Jets in yards and receiving touchdowns. And let's go to a roundtable segment here. So let's bring back Olivia Landis. We're going to start with UEA, then we'll go to Liv, and I'll wrap things up. Who's your breakout player for training camp in 2020?
Okay, so we got to clarify this. It's for training camp.
Yes,
that is
not
the
the
question.
season.
My breakout player for training camp, Ethan, is Bryce Huff out of Memphis. Undrafted free agent. Let's go back to last season, what Kyle Phillips did along that offensive line after he came out of Tennessee. Well, Huff has an opportunity to help this defense in a big way. He is, they're searching for him right now. There he is, number 47, Bryce Huff. At Memphis the last 2 seasons, 16 sacks, 34.5 tackles for loss. He is explosive, strong, got great get-off, has different pass rushing moves, and across the way from Jordan Jenkins, who had 8 sacks last year and 15 sacks the past 2 seasons, you're wondering who's going to fill the void. Who can be a diamond in the rough for this team? Well, I'll tell you what, I think Douglas, we got to look beyond his draft picks as far as draft weekend is concerned, because Bryce Huff is a guy I think is going to have a big summer for this team.
And Bryce Huff, one of many undrafted free agents on this Jets team. One of them also Lawrence Cager, George Campbell, just to name a couple. And Olivia, who's your breakout player for training camp in 2020?
Ethan, I know it's usually pretty traditional to go with a rookie, but I'm actually going to go with a veteran in Brashad Perriman. I think the wide receiver, who is in his 6th year, but first year with the Jets, I think he's really going to shine this training camp. And, you look back to some of his numbers last year. He had career highs in receiving yards, had 645 receiving yards, and a career high in 6 touchdowns. I think he is a piece that can be added to this offense, especially when you think about the departure of Robbie Anderson in free agency. That wide receiver position is wide open. I think there's going to be a big battle in training camp. But I would say keep your eyes on Brashad Perriman.
I like that answer, Liv. And of course, Brashad Perriman, Jets fans are hoping, can translate what happened in the later half of the season into 2020. He was a top 5 receiver statistically from weeks 13 to 17. But for me, I'm going to the defensive side of the ball. And I'm glad EA clarified that this is for training camp because there's only 14 padded practices. So I was going to say Quinnen Williams, but I'm going to go to the cornerbacks room because I feel like that's a room that we don't talk about a whole lot. And I'm going with a second-year player. I'm going with Bless Austin, who was a 6th-round pick out of Rutgers last season. Started last year on the physically unable to perform list. He played in 7 games for the Jets last season, started 6 of them, 24 tackles, had 5 pass defenses, and the team leader last year was actually Terrell Basham in PDs, and he had 9. So for Bless Austin to play in such a short amount of time and put up the numbers that he did, he also had a forced fumble. He also has that go-getter attitude, and I think that second cornerback position opposite Pierre Desir is pretty wide open, and Bless Austin is another guy that we talked about Le'Veon Bell's body fat percentage. Bless Austin, he's knocking on Le'Veon's door because he's up there too.
Or down there.
Or down.
If Le'Veon is 4%, I don't know, what is Bless, 3.5?
Yeah.
It's amazing. These guys are in really good shape. And, oh, by the way, we should have a challenge amongst myself, you, and Liv. Le'Veon Bell, tremendous with the jump rope. Maybe we should do something and bring it to our next training camp live as far as who can do the most of the Jets, with the Jets reporters in terms of jump ropes in a minute.
Yeah, I think almost in a minute. I
Yeah.
thought it was just going to be like a duration.
No.
Like we all start at the same time, last one standing style.
In a minute. But Le'Veon has done the boxing too. And so speaking of the boxing, former Jets great running back Curtis Martin, who this organization's MVP award is named after, he took up boxing after his career as well. Final thoughts here, Ethan. It's go time. The Jets have to make up for time lost in the spring, and Greg Williams said it before. We're not going to have preseason games, but every practice out here, the speed's got to be there. We got to ramp it up, and that's what we're going to be doing here. Jets 360-wise and out there on the field, they got to ramp it up because a lot of new personnel, but you got continuity on the coaching staff, and I can't wait to get this thing going.
There you have it. That was the first Training Camp Live presented by Atlantic Health in the new BetMGM studio. We'll be here all season long, and of course, this was a process that took thousands of hours transforming this former conference room into the state-of-the-art facility. This was a project that started in 2018, and huge collaboration effort, and we're just excited to be here bringing you the content all season long. Have a nice weekend, and we'll see you on Monday.